Cool. So thanks, Matt, for the answer. So basically, just resuming a little bit, we talk about a few ways the merge will change Ethereum. So basically an economic model more durable, an infrastructure more scalable, and its consensus engine more sustainable. Thanks, team, for that. So let's talk actually about what won't change. So I think the developer experience won't change. And I'm hearing a lot about this analogy that we're swapping the gas engine out of the car for an electric one while doing a 90 on a freeway. Yeah. And the driver didn't even notice, right? So I just want to ask you, Matt, can you help Ethereum developer who might be watching, obviously, and we're just ourselves right now, but how things like the engine API will ensure an uninterrupted developer experience?
Yeah, so as mentioned a couple of times, the way that we've broken out these components is really into two important layers, the execution layer and the consensus layer. The execution layer, of course, is what we have essentially today, and the consensus layer is what we're using to replace that proof of work mechanism within the execution layer. And these two, they talk to each other in order to ensure consensus, and they really have a lot of great components. And the engine API allows these two things that didn't inherently exist together to talk to each other and to do so in a way that's really productive, and also in a way that allows us to provide, again, the same set of APIs that already existed and a set of new APIs that we can give to developers to access things like the beacon chain. From consensus, we've been building an execution layer in Hyperledger Besu for quite a while now, and we've also been building Teku as a means to push the ecosystem forward and to really work with the consensus layer and to work with the protocol developers and to ensure that there's a diversity of clients in the ecosystem. And we've always been building these kind of in an open source manner, and we make sure that we provide these components to our users. And then we've also have developers and researchers within Consensus that are build out things like the Engine API. We have, of course, one of our great researchers, Mikhail Kalinin, who has worked with all core devs to develop this specification to allow these two, again, unique components, the execution layer and the consensus layer, to talk. And it's again, really the goal was to reuse existing components to keep a consistent developer experience on the execution layer so that developers understand how their dApps might interact and how the smart contracts will interact, because we're not changing that execution process. We're simply separating consensus from it, and we're building this engine API to allow these two disparate processes to talk to each other. And this is great for a number of reasons, because we didn't have to build a new execution engine for Ethereum. We continue to use the ones that we have today, and we only had to build new consensus engines, which also allowed us to make them really lightweight and focus only on what's important for proof of stake. And again, the separation of components has been great. We've been focusing on things like interoperability. The client teams, not just the Besu and the Teku teams, but all of the others. We've been together here in Amsterdam. They were together back in Greece to make sure that we had all these workshops where we could ensure interoperability, because our goal is to create a developer experience that is dead simple for existing developers and any new developers that come into the space, but also to ensure that as we go through the merge, that we're not changing large pieces of the protocol and pieces of these clients, so that users know what they expect, that the things are going to work, and that we can test them in a reliable and predictable way going forward. We, of course, are very happy about the way things are going. We're always testing, and we want to provide that uninterrupted developer experience, and that's really based off of the fact that we're using what we know works today, and we're adding what we know we need for the future.
That's very interesting, because basically what I'm trying to get from this answer is that the engine API is doing the heavy lifting, right? And my question maybe is to you, Chris, that you're the platform lead advocate of Infura, and you obviously saw how the team handled this situation. So my question is basically what have your team basically has done to prepare for the merge from the Infura side?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of changes happening at the client and at the protocol level. But if you look at it from a developer on Infura perspective, there's not going to be any disruption or change, really. Our primary mission is business continuity, so that all the apps running on Infura continue to run without any issues. And our internal teams are working to collaborate with the protocol teams and other teams to make sure we are ready to go. We've been running and supporting Kiln and Sepolia I hope I'm saying that right. But yeah, basically coordinating with Tim and other team members to make sure that, it's running just fine, and testing and validating to make sure we minimize disruption.
That's very interesting. So, I mean, I think we're about the 45 minutes, but I just want to have some closing thoughts here. And I know, the work is not done, and, there is much testing going around. Obviously, this crypto Twitter is speaking a lot about the testing, so that's great. I just want to ask you, Tim, do you want to give some, the folks out there, any kind of ecosystem updates and takeaway from today's discussion? Never heard about the merge. You guys are testing. Obviously, it's not finished. What you guys, what you want to, make understand the end users out there, what's happening? Yeah.
Right. Sure. There's a few things. So I think, to build on what Chris said, the reason why it took so long to do the merge, right, is because we don't want the network to go down. And it would be easy to just, shut this thing off for a day and power it back on proof of stake. And this might not be obvious if you're not super familiar with Ethereum, but Ethereum has never gone down or stopped. And not 99.9%, it just never has. So it was critical when we designed the merge that we have this kind of handoff process from proof of work to proof of stake happen without any downtime on the chain, and that's been the biggest technical challenge. But it means that if you're a developer, or if you are a smart contract, from the point of view of a smart contract on the chain, there's the last proof of work block that happens, and then 12 seconds after there's the first proof of stake block, but that's it, that's the merge. There's no gap, there's nothing different. It's if you take two random blocks on Ethereum today and the transition between them. And that was critical for us to have as part of the specification. And we've gotten there, frankly. So that's great. Now we're at a spot where, okay, we have this specification. It's working pretty well. We've been working with folks like Infura and others across the ecosystem to make sure that not only the protocol works, but the tooling works. That if you're deploying something, not only does your contract work on Ethereum, but the tool that's used to deploy your contract, all your testing libraries, all of that works smoothly. So that's the first big thing. And I think this is kind of the time also for application developers and tooling teams to try out things. We have a new merge testnet called Kiln, and I would strongly recommend, if you're running a validator, if you write smart contracts, if you build a tool for Ethereum, make sure things work as you would expect them on Kiln. And if you find an issue, now's a great time to report them. And even just as an average user of Ethereum, trying to use this stuff, and if something's not clear, if it's not clear for you, it's probably not clear for somebody else. You can make changes to the documentation to those things. So that would be the first. I think the second thing that's worth pointing on is what do we need to get to the merge on mainnet? And it's worth emphasizing this is by far the largest upgrade we've ever done to Ethereum. Since launching Ethereum, this is the most complicated thing, and the second one is probably 10 times less complicated. So we want to test this thing and make sure that it works. The worst thing that could happen is we get the mainnet and there's an issue and it doesn't go well. So what we've been doing a lot recently is what we've called shadow forks, where we're running test runs of the merge on a small number of nodes that are basically controlled by client developers, testing people, to just make sure that it works. And so we're still finding some edge case issues as we're doing those, but that's really kind of the bar we want to set for ourselves to make sure that we're ready to move to mainnet, is seeing those shadow forks work, continue a week or two after, be smooth, not have any issues across the entire set of clients. Once we've done that, like with any Ethereum upgrade, we run the upgrade through a couple test nets before. So test networks are just networks that are copies of Ethereum, but where the coin is not worth anything. So developers use them to test applications, and they get a fair amount of usage as well. So we'll deploy the merge on a couple of test networks. Again, watch and see, make sure everything works. And then once we've had these shadow forks, once we've had these test networks, we're sure that everything is stable, then we would have the upgrade happen on the Ethereum mainnet.
That's very interesting. So let's assume everything is going well, right? I see these latest papers on the naming. I like the naming, this Surge, Verge. you wanna expand on this naming a little bit, just to understand, like, we wanna do more interviews on this, and I think
Right.
this is really not, after the merge, everything is not finished.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, the merge
progression.
is not the last thing we need to do on Ethereum, right? So there's a bunch of other initiatives, and Vitalik had a tweet with like some catchy name for all of those. I'm not sure what the names like relate to, but at a high level, you know, the next big thing after the merge is Ethereum fees, like scalability. So we have layer 2 solutions on Ethereum which allow users to execute transactions at lower fees. Even though those fees are lower, if there's 10 or 100x more users that come to Ethereum, as we see every couple years, then they'll rise again. And so we want to get ahead of that and proactively lower the fees. So that's the next big thing we'll be working on. In parallel to that, there's a lot of work on improving the EVM. So EVM is basically the computer that runs in Ethereum, and it is kind of a very simple computer for safety reasons, but developers always want more features, and so over time we want to keep adding to it. And then there's many more research initiatives which you can do full interviews in, but Vitalik has this entire roadmap all out on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, I think that's definitely good what we get inside here. But I mean, I think it's time to wrap up. I want to thank you, like team, Matt, Chris, everybody. It's like you guys' time is so valuable, and it's great to have you here. And like I'm super excited about this sustainable, secure, and scalable future. I just want to say, the EF has a bunch of resources for everybody out there that we want to learn. I think Consensus also, like we build this merge hub on consensus.net. We're probably pushing the QR code during the interview. And I want to thank you for your time and for being here today. And really enjoy Dev Connect Amsterdam, so many panel and the great weather. Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.